Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. We are starting a new series entitled The Women of the Bible. There are so many women in the Bible and some that people don't even talk about because there's a lot of them. There's a whole lot of them. Of course, the notable women like Eve and Sarah and Rachel, Leah, Sapphira, Deborah, those types of women. But there are so many notable women in the Bible. And people have this misconception that the Bible is misogynistic simply because it's mostly about men, um, which, yes and no. But if you read the Bible and really look at all of these women who were in the Bible and all the things that they were entrusted by Yahweh to do, and just it's amazing. It's amazing. So, of course, we can't, start the series without first talking about Eve, the first woman ever created. And we're going to start in Genesis chapter 2, verse 20. So the man gave names to all livestock and to the birds of the heavens and to every beast of the field. Before the man there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart. So Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. And the man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." And that one flesh meaning having a baby, right? Because that child is coming from two separate people joining together and now one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, yet they were not ashamed. And so woman was created to be a helpmeet for man, not to be a doormat, not to be a housekeeper, not to be less than, but she was taken out of his rib, which your ribs are on the sides, right? So you have the left side and the right side. Don't know which side that, Yahweh took the rib out of, but the rib comes out of the side. Therefore, she is to stand beside him, not behind him, not in front of him, beside him, right? So, as women, we are to be helpmeets, standing strong beside our husbands. Now, that's not to say that if our husbands are out here doing things that go against God, that we're supposed to still stand beside him. Because we haven't talked about her yet. We'll talk about her later on. But Sapphira stood beside her husband, and what happened to her, right? So, woman was created out of the man's side, right? And like it says, I believe in Corinthians, that women and men are not made independently, right? Man made for woman, woman made for man. Even though women came, from man, out of the side of man, man comes through women through birth, right? So moving on. And the Nahash, or serpent, was more crafty than all the lives of the field which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, "Is it true that Elohim has said, 'Do not eat of every tree of the garden?'" And the woman said to the Nahash, "We are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, 'Do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die.'" Now, mind you, Yahweh did not tell Adam not to touch it. He said not to eat it, which honestly that implies don't touch it, because if you touch it, then you're going to want to eat it, right? So she said that he said not to touch it, but he did not say that. That is not the words that came out of his mouth. And the Nahash said to the woman, "You shall certainly not die," which is the first lie ever told. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be open, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Now, Adam was standing right there with her. Adam received this directive not to eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? He received that directly from Noah. And Eve received that information second hand, right? Because when Noah told Adam that, Eve had not yet been created, right? So Adam told her, that was the directive he was given to tell her, we can eat of any tree in this garden except this one, right? And so now she sees this tree after the serpent has told her. She sees that the tree was good for food because it grew fruit just like all the other trees did, and it was pleasant to the eyes. It was enticing. It drew her in. As women, we can tend to be very visual creatures as well, just like men are. But when it comes to visual things, we're more so visual creatures of material things, right? There are a lot of women who like to have, purses and shoes and clothes and jewelry and pretty things, right? So she was enticed by this tree because it looked good. And the fact of that, Nahash, or the serpent told her that, hey, if you eat of this tree, you will become like Elohim. Well, the thing is, as far as knowing the knowledge of good and evil, we're not supposed to become like him in that sense. Now, you're only supposed to know good, and that was it. But Satan, the serpent, took what Noah told her, twisted it, and kind of stretched it a little bit to entice her, and she fell for it, right? And so it says that it was pleasant to the eyes, it looked good, and a tree desirable to make one wise. She took of its fruit and ate. Now, I do believe that these two trees, the fruit is not the important part of it, as far as like an actual fruit, like a physical fruit, because mind you, the Bible never says what type of fruit it was. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents the serpent, and the tree of life represents Yosha. And you have these two choices. Which one are you going to choose? Are you going to, and this is what it's going to boil down to when it comes to end times, when it comes to when Yosha comes back. Which tree are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the tree of life? Are you going to choose eternal life to spend it with Yahusha? Or are you going to choose the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and spend it in the lake of fire with Satan and the angels who fell with him, right? So these two trees, they're not just physical trees, but they're representation, right? She took of this tree to have this knowledge, right? Having the knowledge of good and evil, which represents the world, was more important to her than having life, which is what we were always supposed to have. We were created to live forever. Now, when Hasatan said, "You shall not certainly die," here's the thing: I do believe that Adam and Eve were under the impression if they take of the fruit of this tree, if they eat of this tree, if they make this choice, then they will instantly die. And when Satan said that you shall not certainly die, he's playing into the fact that they think it means instant death. And yes and no, it is instant death, meaning that as soon as they made that choice to eat of this tree, they chose to die, meaning that they would experience death. They wouldn't live forever. That's why we all, will experience death. Well, there may be some people who don't, right? We're still living when the great tribulation comes and they won't experience death, but majority of people will experience death. And that is what that means, because what leads to death? Sin. Sin leads to death. they sinned by disobeying Yahweh, by eating the fruit of that tree, and that leads to death, right? We eventually die. We don't live on to, you know, be hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? Because I do believe the I think the age limit at that time was like 1,000 or something like that, and I believe it was Abraham. No, it was either Noah or somebody else who fell short of that living to be 1,000 years. But let's get back to the story. So she was enticed by this tree. She was like, "Oh well, I want to have the knowledge of good and evil. I want to be like Elohim. I want to know what He knows." Right? It's not meant for us to. It was never meant for us to. So continuing on, then the both then the eyes of both of them were open, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. So again, you know, because she decided to do this, right? Now, mind you, the one who actually sinned was Adam because he knew better. He got that directive directly from Yahuwah, and she sinned too, but it was him. However, she caused him to sin. Now, we wear clothes today, right? It is not appropriate for you to walk outside naked. You can be arrested and fined for indecent exposure for being naked, right? So think about that. They were in this garden naked, not realizing that they are naked because that's just how they were made. And they didn't know that being naked in front of each other out in the open in public, even though, at that time there were no other people there, it wasn't a big deal. But now they see that they're naked and they feel shame, like they have been exposed, their eyes have been opened, right? At that time, their eyes were closed, not physically, but I don't want to say spiritually, but kind of spiritually in a way. Their eyes were closed, right, to anything that had to do with evil. Like in today's time, being naked is so perverse and so just, listen, on a whole nother level, right? It's perverted. And that's what happened. They chose to sin, right, to go against Yahweh's directions and to eat this fruit, and now they realize that they're naked. They weren't supposed to know that they were naked. And naked today is like more so a bad thing. Like even within your household, nobody should be walking around naked because of the perverse things behind it. With children being raped and coalesced, change the C to an M, and things like that. Like, being naked, you should not be naked around anybody. You should not be naked around your children. You should not be naked around your parents. You should only be naked when you are alone or with your spouse. Right? But it was not meant to be like that. We were always supposed to be naked. We were always supposed to not have clothes. But now, because she decided to listen to the serpent and to cause her husband to sin. Well, she didn't really cause him to sin; he chose to. But again, she enticed him, just like the serpent enticed her. She enticed her husband, and now we have to do laundry. We have to do laundry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to do laundry. And I heard the voice of Yahweh Elohim walking about in the garden toward the wind of the day, uh, which I don't know if that would have been the east wind or the west wind, whatever the wind of the day that was. I guess each wind, north, south, east, and west, had their day that they blew. So he was walking toward the wind of the day, whatever direction the wind was supposed to be flowing that day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim among the trees of the garden. So here's the thing: when we sin, right? What is the first thing that we do? 9 times out of 10, we do not go to Yahweh first. We sin and then we want to hide. We want to pretend that it didn't happen. Or we might go and tell a friend. Or, we might just become recluse and just shy away from everybody just seclude ourselves, be a hermit, and like not be around anybody. But here's the thing: Yahweh sees everything. Whether you confess your sins or not, He sees everything, right? And so they think that He did not know what they had done. He thinks that they did not know. No, they think that He did not know what they had done, and that they, did something in secret, right? Like He didn't see it. And we'll see that in a moment. And Yahuwah Elohim called unto Adam and said to him, Where are you? Mind you, He didn't call both of them, He called Adam. And He said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself, right? And He said, Who made you know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat? Now, mind you, Yahuwah knows the answers to all these questions. Anytime Yahuwah asks a question to someone in the Bible, He knows the answer before they give it. His whole thing is this person going to tell the truth? And He knows whether or not they're going to tell the truth, but He's giving them the opportunity to make that choice, to choose life, to choose to tell the truth, right? So He already knows the answer. He already does, but He wants to give us the opportunity to be like, hey, what happened? And for us to confess. And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. Now, he's not only blaming Eve, he's also blaming Yahuwah because he's like, you gave her to me. So this is technically your fault and her fault because she gave the tree, she gave it to me to eat and I ate it. But he's not taking accountability for himself. He's not taking accountability for himself. So he's like, yeah, you made her. She gave me the fruit and I ate it. And that's what happened. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the woman, What is this you have done? And the woman said, The Nahash deceived me and I ate. So she's blaming the serpent, right? They're placing blame on everybody but themselves. They're not taking accountability for their actions. And that is something that I know that as women, a lot of times we do not want to take accountability for our actions. That's something that it seems hard to do. And it's funny but not funny. I see a lot of this a lot of times on social media and even on YouTube where there are, skits and things like that of couples, and it talks about how the woman never wants to take accountability, how she never says sorry, or she just, kind of lets things play out, and instead of taking accountability, continue to prolong, the argument that she and her husband or boyfriend or whoever are having. Um, and uh, people make it seem like, oh, that's just something that women do. But as we can see in scripture, that's been from the beginning. That's been since Eve. People make it today seem like it's a cute thing, but not realizing where that stems from, where women don't want to take accountability for things that they did, right? We don't want to take accountability. We don't want to say we're sorry. We're just like we always want to be right, right? And this actually can go for everybody. But specifically for this series, we're just talking about women. Women always have to have the last word. They always have to be right. They like that's just what it is, how it always has been. And people make it seem like it's cute, and it's not. Because if you go back far enough to Genesis and see what Eve did, you will see that's where it stemmed from, right? If you think about the woman, a lot of our qualities come from Eve. And this has been thousands of years, y'all, thousands of years since Eve. And we still doing the same thing, not taking accountability for anything that we've done. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the Nahash, Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. To the woman he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception. Bring forth children in pain, and your desire is for your husband, and he does rule over you. So, again, We have Eve to thank of why we have such painful childbirth. Not even just painful childbirth, but also painful monthly cycles. You know, painful. I know some women have painful ovulations. I'm one of them. Ovulation is extremely painful. It's a wonder how I even have a child. But that's why we go through the pain that we go through. But the thing is, yes, we experience this pain, but Yahuwah made it to where we can bear it, right? So when I had my son, I didn't have the option of having epidural or any kind of medication. I didn't have him in a hospital. I had a midwife. So there was no option for epidural or pain medication. I thugged it out and pushed him out. Okay. And it was painful. But I one thing that does say in the Bible is that, does a woman remember the pain when she gave birth afterwards? No. I remember that it was painful, but not how painful it was. Are there things that I can almost equate to how painful it was? Possibly, right? There are a few things, um, but it's not a pain that I continuously remember, right? And it's also why women continue to have more children. Yes, we experience pain through childbirth, but we don't remember that pain until we have another child and we have the contractions again, right? So we have to endure this pain, but he made us strong. Like women are very, very strong. I wouldn't say they're stronger than men, but women have a higher pain tolerance than men do, right? And I'm not saying this to demean or belittle men, but I mean, like, if a man stubs his toe, the world is ending. Any little kind of pain, life is over, right? But with women, we endure a lot because we have to, because that's the way that Yahweh made us. We have to endure, right? Yahusha said, those who endure to the end will be saved. We endure a lot of pain, and we can endure an immense amount of pain. And I've heard through like doctors and whatnot that pain birth is the same level of pain as having a heart attack, right? So if a man has a heart attack, he's essentially experiencing the same kind of pain that a woman experiences through childbirth. Now, how they measure this and how they know this, I don't know. I feel like that's impossible to even be able to measure. Uh, yeah, that's leave it to them. That's what they say, but I don't know about that. Okay, I don't know about that. And so then he says, and to the man he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it, right? He commanded Adam, not Eve. And Adam listened to his wife, not Yahuwah. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you are to eat of it all the days of your life. And we're going to skip down um, to verse 20. And a man called his wife's name Hawwah, because she became the mother of all living. And Yahweh Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his wife and dressed them. And Yahweh Elohim said, see, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. So Yahweh Elohim sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. And he drove the man out, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So they were both essentially kicked out of the garden because they know now, they have the knowledge of good and evil. They have become like Yahuwah, right? Because who created evil? Yahuwah did, right? People think that Satan created evil. No, Yahuwah created Satan. Therefore, he had to have also created evil. And there's a couple of verses in the Bible that mention that Yahuwah created evil. But again, he's like, no, they have become like us. So they will know that if they touch or take fruit and eat from the tree of life, then they're going to live forever despite their iniquity. And it's like, he's like, no, that's not happening. Absolutely not. Get out. You are to get out. So that is the first episode in this series, Women of the Bible, right? Had to start it off with Hawwah because she set the tone for the rest of the women in the Bible. Thank y'all for listening.